I have been in my creative bubble in this space for 48 hours straight. I've been writing a bunch of notes on how to take inspired action. So that's what we're gonna chat about today. Hi, welcome back to my channel. Like I just said, we're going to be talking about inspired action. Recently on my Instagram stories, I posted multiple polls about just some soul terminology, asking all of you what you had a more difficult time with. And one of the ones I found really interesting was flow state and inspired action. And the majority of the people who responded to that poll said that inspired action was more difficult for them. And so I found this really interesting, and I wanted to talk more about inspired action, and there's a reason why I'm putting that in air quotes, what it is, how to take it, and kind of what I've learned about it. Especially as I've shifted from the more doing masculine mindset to the more feminine flowing being mindset. So that's what we're going to talk about today, inspired action. So first of all, what is inspired action? When you hear the word action, I believe because of the society and the time that we're living in, the word action has a very masculine connotation to it. It's this action of doing something, of putting effort in, of putting in the work, of trying and striving and pushing and forcing. At least for me, that was my definition of action, or how I perceived what taking action meant. So a great example from my own life of inspired action is the way in which I built this YouTube channel. There was a lot of effort that went into the early stages of this YouTube channel, a lot of content, a lot of research, a lot of effort. I call it efforting, just so much work and so much effort and so much expending of my energy towards something. And I say that it was inspired in that it was outside the norm of what I was doing in my life currently at that time. So I was very much in the corporate world. I was very much in like a business mindset. So to shift into a creative mindset, which is something that I hadn't been in since I was a child, since I was like 6, 7, 8, 9 years old. You know, I felt like that was just kind of squashed out of me. To then start taking action on something that was outside of the norm, that was outside of cultural conditioning, that was outside of, you know, societal expectations, it felt inspired to me in that way. But that inspired action had a very masculine tone around it. So it was about effort, it was about expending energy, it was about work, and tipped so far to the point where I was exhausted and I was burnt out and I wasn't enjoying myself anymore. I wasn't enjoying the content anymore. I wasn't enjoying creating anymore. It was almost like I'd kind of built yet another prison for myself. Like at first it was an escape from the prison of the corporate grind and just from the grind in general. And then I began grinding in my creative business and my YouTube channel. And so it was kind of just switching from one grind to another because I'd only ever been in that masculine energy. The feminine, the divine feminine, that energy only came into my life, I would say 3 or 4 years ago. And that's the key difference, because I think a lot of people think of, like when they think of inspired action, they do think of the effort. They do think of work. They do think of having to expend energy, that it's going to be almost draining in a way. So as I've introduced the divine feminine into my life, I still act on things, but it's no longer forced. And if it feels like effort, I know that I don't have enough momentum built up, which is something we're going to get into on how to know like when to take inspired action or how that buildup happens. The biggest shift happened for me when I realized that inspired action is actually inspired movement. So again, like I said before, the word action has such an efforting connotation, it has such a masculine connotation that it can feel kind of daunting. It can feel kind of like, I don't want to take action on this unless I know for sure it's the exact right thing I'm supposed to be doing. I know it's going to pay off and that this is the exact right next step. Kind of like I don't want to waste my time putting effort into something that's not going to pan out. So in switching that perspective from that more masculine tone of inspired action, switching that to inspired movement, that is much more feminine. When you think of movement, you think of flow. I don't know, whenever I hear the word movement, I think of a dancer. Just kind of like just flowing through movement. And there's beauty in each movement and in each step that is being taken, even if the dancer doesn't know what the next movement is going to look like. Because it depends on the momentum that the dancer has into what movement they can go into next. And so shifting my perspective, I'm sorry, I have to give myself a pat on the back because that was a, thank you, that was a fantastic analogy for how I've been trying to put this into words. I have this whole journal here, that wasn't even written down. That was really good. So inspired movement and the dancer. So inspired movement is that nudge, that whisper that you get from your soul, not necessarily to take action, but to move in the direction of your soul's path, to move more in that direction of alignment, of vibrational alignment. And the biggest thing I've learned about inspired movement is that it's not always an action. It's not always a step. It's not always a task. It's not always a plan. It's simply just movement in that direction, in the direction of your soul. So I believe that our souls are trying to communicate with us every single moment of every single day, but we are so distracted. We are so consumed by lower vibrational thoughts, worry, doubt, fear, blame, thinking about the future, ruminating, projecting into the future, ruminating over the past. We're just so distracted that we're not actually present. So the most potent time that your soul is trying to reach you is in the present moment. And much like a dancer who doesn't have the choreography all figured out and is just going with the flow and the natural movement, that movement is happening in the present. The dancer is fully present in their body and what's happening in their body and feeling into what the next right movement is for them in their choreography. If you've ever choreographed a routine before, especially contemporary or ballet, you'll know that it's not something you just think of, or at least for me it wasn't something I thought of before. I had to be present and in the process of it and actually doing the moves to see what the next move would be after doing a move before it, like what the momentum, what the flow would look like, what the rhythm was, so that then I could move into the next movement with ease. That can only happen in the present moment. You're not thinking about past movements. You're not thinking about what the future movement could be. You're just present and it just happens and it just flows. So with that in mind, we must create space, soul space, in order for us to hear these messages, in order for us to glean or to receive that inspired movement. Mornings are absolutely ideal for this because it really sets the tone of your day. The biggest thing about opening soul space and creating soul space is that it really does need to be distraction free. And if you can find a place where you are truly alone, so I've noticed when I was living with someone, you just don't realize how much other people's energy influences you, especially if you are an empath or you're just highly sensitive to things around you, to energy, to emotions, to whatever it may be. But if you can find a place, so if that means going outside, if that means driving somewhere to like a park where you can open up soul space, or going to a particular part of your house, or going on the rooftop, or whatever, just somewhere where you are truly alone, you don't have other energy affecting you or influencing you in any way, to really open up that soul space. Because it is so hard, it is so hard to hear the nudges and the whispers and to receive that inspired movement when you are influenced by other energies around you, especially other people's energies and people that you care about. Now, of course, creating and opening soul space is something that does take time and practice and consistency. Because if you've never done this before, you're essentially learning how your soul prefers to speak with you. And it can speak with you in a number of different ways. Some of them are through the clairs, like clairvoyance, clairaudience. There's a bunch of other clairs too. Those are the two that I am very familiar with because those are the two that I work with. If you are a writer, your soul may prefer to communicate with you through journaling, through automatic writing. If you are a dancer, perhaps movement is the way that your soul will speak to you. If you are an artist, like a painter or someone who sketches or draws, perhaps that's, those visuals will come through. That's clairvoyance, but the visual will come through, and then you take that and you draw something, you see the pictures and the images in your mind. If you're very musically inclined, this is like clairaudience. If you get a song that's stuck in your head, or song lyrics that suddenly pop into your mind, a song that you haven't heard in years and years, that could also be your soul trying to reach you. So it takes some time to learn how your soul prefers to speak with you. For me, my soul prefers to speak with me through journaling. So sometimes automatic writing, but it is more so a journaling process. Also through clairvoyance, which is clear seeing. So I get downloads, I get images, I get visions. It's kind of like if you had an old school record player. It's kind of like that for me, where the image will come in and then it'll kind of fade out, and then another image will come in and then that'll fade out, and then there'll be nothing, and then something else will come in. And so it's kind of this, that's why I say it takes time, and it also takes patience. You can't feel like there's something else you need to be doing or that you should be doing. When you open up that soul space and you create that space and time for it, you're entering something called Kairos time instead of Chronos time. And this is something that the ancient Greeks believed, which was that Chronos time is how we usually live our days, which is with schedules and looking at the clock, seeing hours and minutes and living your life kind of like by the clock and by what time it is. Whereas Kairos time is soul time. It's the time where everything that has ever happened, past, present, and future, is all happening in the now. Very similar to when you are in a flow state and you're not looking at the clock. Everything's just flowing and it's all kind of happening at once, and kind of like where you lose track of time, because in Kairos time, time doesn't exist. It's soul time. It's infinite time. It's eternal time. The inspired movement can reach you because you are present and because you are in a place where you aren't distracted. So when you open up soul space, the easiest way to do this, I wrote it down here, is to be in your space, right? But to set that intention and say it out loud. And just say, I open up this soul space for the highest good. What messages do you have for me? What would you like me to be aware of today? So the thing about inspired movement or receiving soul whispers and soul nudges is that oftentimes it doesn't make sense right away. Actually, usually all the time, it does not make sense right away. And I think that's why so many people doubt their intuition. They doubt whatever image is coming into their mind or the song that's popping into their head. They doubt it because their logical mind, their rational mind, the ego, tries to figure it out and tries to piece together how this is a part of the larger plan and what this could mean. And I still kind of can get into that headspace quite often where my ego wants to take over and try to figure it out. And then if it can't figure it out, it's like, oh, well, that must have just been nothing. And then I'm like, but that's my ego saying that. So obviously it was something, and it was from another part of me that isn't my ego. So it must have been from my soul. So that's a good distinguisher. That's what's amazing about contrast. You start to learn through the doubting of yourself. Anytime you're doubting something or you're trying to force and push and figure something out, that's your ego at work. And so if your ego is like, this doesn't make sense to me, then you know that it was a soul nudge, because the ego can't figure it out. The ego cannot rationalize it. So I want to give you an example of a soul whisper that I received recently, and it was something that made absolutely no sense. So I was on a walk with Denali, and a song popped into my head, one I haven't heard in probably like a decade, and it took me a minute to even register what the lyrics were, because I always get the lyrics wrong, and also who the artist was. And so it's that song where it's like, there's a place downtown where the freaks all come around, right? Like, I think those are the lyrics. Something, something, it's a dirty free-for-all. And I think it's a Kesha song. And so I had that song pop into my head. I haven't heard it in forever. And it's weird that that's like the only phrase that popped into my mind. And so I had that come through, and I was like, interesting. I just kind of observed it, and I didn't really know what it meant. It didn't make any sense to me. But I knew, because I've done this many, many times before, to just kind of trust the process, and to trust that something else would pop up into my awareness that would help make that make sense at some point. And so what that could have been is, it could have been a cue or a soul whisper to listen to a song by Kesha, or to listen to a playlist by Kesha, or to do a Kesha ride on Peloton, because they have things like Britney Spears rides, or I'm trying to think of the other ones they have. That's the only one that's coming to mind right now. But they also have, and this is where I started to piece things together, a Greatest Showman ride. So lately I've been struggling with entertainment in general. Like, as I've been going down my soul path and my spiritual path, I am not as amused or entertained with like your regular entertainment, like movies and Netflix and things like that. I don't find it entertaining anymore. It's not fun for me in the way that it used to be. And so I've been trying to figure out and asking for guidance around like what's fun for me, like what really can bring me joy that isn't writing or creating something, like something where I can relax into it and really enjoy myself and have fun. And like scrolling Netflix is just, that's not it, right? But there are some movies that really resonate with me, like on a soul level, and The Greatest Showman is one of those movies. And so the way my mind started to piece this together was that song, like where the freaks all come around. For some reason, the word freak is there's like an attachment there to like circus freak because it's just a phrase, even though I don't believe that's true at all. But that's what The Greatest Showman is about. It's all of these misfits coming together. There's also a Greatest Showman ride on Peloton. And so I realized that when I've done that ride before, it helped me step into my power, and it like that whole soundtrack makes me cry, and I just feel something so, like, I'm getting emotional thinking about it now. Like, I feel something so deeply. I feel so connected to the soundtrack, to the message of that whole movie. And when I watch it, it brings me so much like joy, and I haven't seen it in a while. And so I'm getting confirmation right now because I feel overcome with emotion around that, where it's like, if you want something joyful that's relaxing, that you can relax into and just enjoy yourself, it's The Greatest Showman. And so that's what I'm saying. It's inspired movement. It's not necessarily an action. It's a little thing, especially if you've asked for guidance around something. So for me, it's guidance around bringing more joy into my life, like relaxed joy, effortless joy, just something that I know I already connect with, but maybe haven't done or seen in a really long time. So that's an example of clairaudience. That's an example of a soul whisper, a soul nudge, something coming into my awareness that didn't make sense before. And only when other things started to pop up like it, or I went onto my Peloton and then saw The Greatest Showman ride, one that I haven't done in a while, did things start to connect where I was like, I love this soundtrack. I love this movie. And I bet you if I played this soundtrack in the mornings to start my days, I would like lift my vibe and I would feel more joyful. So that's what I mean when I say it's not always going to make sense at first, but to keep it in your awareness and to see how it might connect to other whispers and other nudges that your soul is giving you. Like I said, clairvoyance is one of the strongest clair senses that I have. And so oftentimes in the mornings, that's when I'll see myself sitting somewhere to write a chapter, maybe sitting outside or taking my laptop to the park, or I'll see myself on the floor with a bunch of colored index cards, which I now know is, and you all know, is story mind mapping. So I'll see these images or me doing something. It's always me looking at myself doing something, and I'll know that that's a nudge from my soul. And usually I ask, like, what should I be aware of today? Like, where should I be focusing my energy today? That's a question I ask a lot, actually, every single morning. And so it's more of like, what is going to feel most aligned for my soul today? What is going to fill me up, light me up? What is going to make this the best day that it can be given my current circumstances and given this current reality and the state of things? And so then I'll receive those visuals of myself doing certain things, and I don't question it anymore. Like, if I see myself at Hobby Lobby, I go to Hobby Lobby. If I see myself at TJ Maxx, I go to TJ Maxx. If I see myself at the car wash, I go to the car wash. If I see myself just driving and I don't know where I am, I'll just like go for a drive. If I see myself in the forest, then I'll grab Denali and we'll, you know, as long as the sun's out, and we'll go to the national forest and go for a hike. If I see myself cooped up on the couch with a fire blazing and I'm in, you know, my pajamas and I'm just like super comfortable and I have my laptop and I'm writing, then that's what I do that day. And I know a lot of people might listen to that and say, wow, like that's so nice to have all that freedom to be able to do that. And you're right, it is, but the truth is we all have that freedom. We all really do have that freedom. It's just like, do you want that freedom more than the current things that are distracting you from that freedom in your life? So I've had to let go of a lot of things in order to be in this place where I just wake up and don't have a plan for the day and I can just ask my soul, like, what are we doing today? Like, Or maybe not, what are we doing? Like, how are we being today? Like, how are we just going to be? Like yesterday, I spent all day in this very spot, actually 2 days, I said this earlier, 48 hours in this very spot, just doing soul work, doing reflections and like spiritual mentorship. So, you know, I have like a mentor, and so I've been kind of going through that whole process and just spending full days with my soul, because I don't have a 9-to-5 job. I got rid of that. It was a distraction. Anything that, it's almost like, are you going to fight for your limitations? Are you going to fight for your distractions? Are you going to fight for your freedom? And I guarantee you, if you follow the inspired movement, if you begin to listen to your soul more and more and practice that and trust what it's showing you, what it's guiding you toward, and to not feel like you have to take inspired action, but that all that's required of you is to just move in that direction, like the dancer. Because what happens is, once you start that movement, more movement will follow that. And then the more movement you have, it doesn't have to be fast movement. It can be very slow, very steady. And as that movement continues, you build momentum. And as you build momentum, that's where the action and the tasks, I guess you could say, can come into play. But because you have this momentum built up, it doesn't feel like action. It doesn't feel like work. It doesn't feel like you're efforting, because you're already in the flow of it. You already have the momentum going. And so it just comes naturally and easily. So many people think inspired action is like, I'm just gonna sit here and then write a book. And they're like, okay, I'm inspired. I have an action. I'm gonna go write my book. And it's like, no, you were literally just sitting here in a stagnant position, and then suddenly you're just going to go take this action. No, it's listening to your soul, creating that soul space, opening the soul space, understanding the movement and the flow and the whispers and the nudges that are moving through you. Like the whisper that you might get might be like Pinterest or something like that. And you're like, Pinterest, what? And then you go on there and there are all these beautiful images for fantasy worlds and characters. And then you start to feel that movement grow within you, where you're like, oh, like this is giving me an idea for a book. This is giving me an idea for a scene. And then for me, oftentimes I'll get another nudge where it's like Skyrim, or I'll like start hearing a Skyrim sound. I'm like, okay, like guess we're playing Skyrim now. So I'll like go play Skyrim, and something will happen, like an interaction with one of the characters, or I'll visit a place on the map I haven't been to before, and I'll be like, wow, this is so cool. Or like, I feel like I've seen this before. I feel like I've visualized this before. And then from there, it's like I'll start to see, I'll get another download or like a visual, a soul nudge, where I'll see a scene playing out in my mind for a particular character. And then I'm like, okay, I guess we're writing a scene now. So that's what I'm saying. That's the movement. That's the momentum that builds and builds. And then you get to the action. And the movement for the thing, like the movement may take a while. You may have multiple movements. Like for that example right there wasn't all that much movement to get me to this soul nudge where I wanted to actually write the words. But it's not like you're just gonna sit down and write a whole book. You're going to write sentence by paragraph by page. Like it's a process. So it's just trusting that the inspired movement, that there will be multiple inspired movements, and that as long as you follow those, you're going to pick up momentum, because you're moving, just like the dancer, you're flowing, you're moving. And that will just gradually, naturally, kind of like a river, just kind of like waterfall, right? Just like dump you into the next, dump is like such an aggressive word, but release you, right? Like release you into the next thing, which is usually the thing that is the action, the task, the thing that feels like it would be effort. But when you have that momentum going, it doesn't feel like effort, because everything's already there. And so you're just channeling everything that's here onto the page. So that is all I've got for inspired action, which I like to call inspired movement. If you liked this video, please go ahead and give it a thumbs up to support my channel. Don't forget to check out all of the information in the description box below for my books, courses, programs, and so much more. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in my next video. Bye.